there, we made it. What are we talking about today? What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. A couple months back, I posted an episode sharing my go-to therapy tools. Not like the big heavy-hitting interventions, but like those little tools that you just always want to have handy in your back pocket just in case you might need them. And I really enjoyed making that episode. And also, it seems that you all appreciated it as well. So I thought it might be fun to do a sort of part 2 of this episode and share some more of my go-to therapy tools. Because actually, once I made that episode, then I was seeing my therapy clients the next couple weeks and I thought, oh, also this one, also that one, also this other one. So we're going to put those together in this episode. And of course, everything I'm sharing here does not constitute, professional advice, supervision. It's not a substitute for those things, but it can be helpful, I think, sometimes to just hear from another therapist, like, hey, here's how I do it. Take it or leave it. One of my go-to therapy tools that I think is a lot of therapists' go-to therapy tools, especially at the beginning of treatment with a new client, is the miracle question. Apparently, this one comes from solution-focused therapy. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I am not an expert, but I feel like it applies in pretty much any situation. Basically, the general concept of the miracle question is to invite clients to share what would look different about their lives if the problem that they're coming to see us for went away. Sometimes when we invite clients or potential clients to describe what it is that they're looking for support with when seeking therapy, they can be pretty vague. Like they might say something like, I just want to feel better. I just want to be happier. I just want to feel more secure. I want better self-esteem. And those are all great things, but that is really, really unspecific. So it's a lot more helpful to ask a miracle question and say something like, okay, let's say you were to meet with me for a while and you found our time helpful. What sorts of things do you imagine would be different about your life? And for two people who say, I want to feel better, they may have very different sounding answers to that question. So it just helps get at the specifics of what somebody is really wanting to target or change when they're coming to see a therapist, and that can help kind of tailor our approach. And I definitely use that question a lot when it comes to treatment planning. Okay, and I think we're already kind of dabbling into the next go-to clinical tool that I like to have in my back pocket. And I'm sure this has a clinical name from somewhere, but I don't remember where I learned it. It's just been so deeply sitting in my back pocket since forever that I don't know where I picked it up from. But I will just title this tool, So if we solve this problem, then what? Now I know at face value that just sounds like slightly different phrasing of the miracle question again, but there is a difference. The miracle question is focusing on saying like, hey, if we could just magically solve all of your problems overnight, what would look different about your life? And, it might be like, oh, life's going to be so much better in all these different ways. I'm going to feel these different ways about it. I'm going to get along better in my relationships, et cetera, et cetera. All these positives that people are usually hoping for from their problem being resolved. But this second tool where I'm saying, okay, let's say we solve this problem, then what, is particularly looking for what additional sets of problems might be lying underneath the surface of the first problem that you're coming in for help with. If we just put on our systems theory hat for a second, like anytime we change one thing about whether it's our individual lives or something about our relationship, anything, anywhere, it's going to have a ripple effect on everything else. And there's going to be things that are better or easier or more desirable, but there's also going to be things that come up that feel like new problems because we fixed the first problem. I especially like to pull this tool out if I'm sensing that a client is kind of hyper-focused on one kind of problem. It may be a very real problem for them, but they might be so focused on like, this is my one problem, that they're not able to see that there might be a lot more to the story that's affecting their day-to-day life much more than the one problem they seem so hyper-focused on. Okay, this is one of those tools that I think is just much easier to explain by example. So here's an example of what this could look like. What is it that you think you're needing in this situation? If I just had a little more cash, life would be so much easier. Now, obviously, I don't have a magic wand just like sitting in my back pocket, but I wonder if it would be helpful to ask, like, let's pretend I had that magic wand, I waved it, and suddenly we downloaded, let's say, $10 million into your bank account. Why not? Then what? Woo, $10 million. Ooh, that sounds really nice. But yeah, I guess even if I had that much money, I'd probably still feel pretty lonely. I wonder if it might be helpful for us to focus on that loneliness a bit more together, not only because I don't have $10 million to give you, but I think I'm hearing you say that even if you had that extra cash sitting in your account, you might still be feeling lonely. And I think there's some things we can do to tackle that here. Okay, again, this tool, I don't know who to credit. I did not come up with it myself. Did a supervisor teach this to me at some point? Or I don't know. But I like to call this one surveillance camera. If I'm able to go back and find the actual, place origin of these tools and proper names, I'll go back and link to those in the description below. But yeah, surveillance camera, which sounds creepy now that we're talking about it, but let me explain how this one works. Basically, I like to use this tool in any moments where there's some isolated incident where a client has gotten really emotional, whether it's anger or anxiety or something else, and they keep using this kind of vague language to describe what happened in the moment when I ask them to tell me what happened, right? They'll say things like, oh, I flipped out. Oh, I blew up. Oh, I got really mad. And I'm not really hearing what behaviors happened. Then I'll say something like, hey, if we were to imagine for a second that during that moment, there was a surveillance camera recording the whole thing and we were now watching it back together, what sorts of things would I see as I'm watching that footage back with you? Here's an example of how an interaction like this might go. Yeah, and then I just got super mad and I kind of blew up at my partner. Okay, so it sounds like things really escalated in that situation. You use this phrase blowing up, which could mean different things depending. So I wonder if you could say more about what blowing up looks like for you. I just got really mad and I flipped out, I'm wondering if you can help paint the picture for me so I can see the situation just a little more clearly. So let's just pretend, let's say there was a surveillance camera that was capturing this whole scenario you were just telling me about when you blew up. What sorts of things would I see in the footage if I were to watch it back? I find the surveillance camera question very useful, again, especially for clients who aren't quite totally aware of what's happening in their body or how they're interacting with their context, the situation that they're in, other people who are around. And so it helps them build up more self-awareness and oftentimes will flag behaviors for me that otherwise I had no clue might be happening. Say, wait, I'm curious about that part. Tell me more what's happening when you said that, you did X, Y, Z. A lot of times there's really, really key details in there that then we can target more specifically in our work together. Okay, the next tool I do know the name for. In fact, it has many names depending on which theoretical approach you're using. Some of the ones I'm most familiar with are cognitive diffusion, if you're using an ACT framework, or just mindful observing from a DBT framework. There's a lot of different tools we can use to help our clients build up some cognitive diffusion, but the Leaves on the Stream tool is just one that I've heard quite a bit. There's lots in this category of visualizations that help clients basically separate themselves just a bit from what their experiences are, their thoughts and their emotions. I feel like because so often therapists are helping clients get more in touch with their emotions, we can sometimes neglect the value of teaching clients to appropriately compartmentalize or, yes, dissociate from their thoughts and emotions, but doing so in a controlled, intentional way. I think this is particularly useful for anyone having difficulties regulating their emotions, whether it's coming from more of a traumatic background or if just for whatever reasons you experience your thoughts and emotions quite intensely. I'll use this tool especially on the fly in session if I'm trying to lean into some other intervention with the client and either their thoughts or their emotions are interrupting the process and making it difficult for them to actually do whatever intervention we might be trying to do. Here's an example of what that could sound like. Sorry, I'm having trouble staying focused. Could you say that again? Yeah, I'm really glad you said something. Actually, let's pause on that for a second. I'm wondering, is there something going on that's making it difficult to stay focused? It's so dumb. It's just that thought saying that I'm stupid and I'm not going to get anywhere and what's the point? Wow. Yeah, that's a really harsh thought. I would have trouble staying focused too if that soundtrack was blasting full volume in my brain. And I know that thought often chimes in when we're working on something. So maybe we can see if there's a way that we can create a little distance from that internal harsh critic. Would you be willing to try an exercise with me to see if we can help some of those thoughts just sort of pass through your mind rather than latching on and taking hold? I try not to overly jump into cognitive diffusion because sometimes we need to help our clients sit with whatever narratives, feelings, etc. they might have coming up. But I find it particularly useful if there's like a self-critic that is just so loud that whatever it is that we're trying to do in session is just getting perpetually interrupted because the peanut gallery is just flinging criticisms left and right, and they can't even hear their own thoughts anymore. Okay, and I have one last tool to share for today's episode, but after I filmed the first episode sharing my go-to therapy tools, I saw clients after and realized there's a tool that I genuinely use all the time, and I like to call this one seeing your emotions as passengers in the car. Again, if this is a proper clinical tool that has a name, I am out of the loop on it, but I don't think I am the original creator of this tool. I like to pull this tool out when a client is telling me that they're not able to do something because their emotions or sometimes their self-criticism is too intense or too loud. And so therefore they can't do this thing that might actually be quite important to them to do. The way that I like to frame it with my clients is often I'll say something like, it's like you're on the sidewalk trying to get into your car and the anxiety is trying to get in the car with you and you're fighting it by saying like, no, anxiety, you are staying home today. You're not getting in the car. And now you're just in an argument fighting on the sidewalk with your anxiety, but you're not getting anywhere. And so might it be much more helpful to say, okay, anxiety, if you're going to come, you're going to sit in the back seat. You're going to buckle up. You're going to let me drive this car though. Okay. I'm driving. You can come with me and offer your commentary in the back, but you're not going to be the driver of this car. Here's an example of how I might bring this up in a session. I'm just so anxious. I don't think I can do it. I'm going to be anxious the entire time I ask her out and I'm going to mess it up. So I need to get rid of this anxiety first so I can be myself. Sometimes when we get really anxious about something, we can spend so much energy trying to reduce or eliminate the anxiety that we never actually achieve what we set out to do to begin with. You've been thinking about asking Gina out for, I think, months now, and that anxiety has really held you back the entire time. So I wonder if there could be a way for you to maybe bring your anxiety with you while you ask her out. Wait, you can do that? What do you mean exactly? Well, let's say we think of you asking Gina out as taking a car ride from point A to point B. You've been hanging out at point A for a little while, standing at the curb, kind of arguing with your anxiety because you're trying so desperately to keep it out of the car so you can get to point B and ask Gina out. But what if instead of spending all your energy trying to keep your anxiety out of the car, you let it come with you as a passenger in the back seat? It's going to be hanging out back there, offering its running commentary, but it can be safely buckled up while you're in the driver's seat in charge of where the car is going. Yeah, I guess I never thought of it that way, but that is a helpful visual. I feel a little better. Like, I don't want to feel anxious, but I'm also tired of fighting, and I'm afraid I'm never going to ask her out at this rate, so it seems worth a try. So I wonder if it could be helpful for us to explore what tools will help you feel like your anxiety can stay safely in the back seat, away from the driver's seat, so you don't have to be afraid that anxiety might hijack the car and deter you from your destination or put you in danger. And a lot of times, if we willingly bring our emotions with us rather than like continuously trying to kick them to the curb, as with humans, they're just a lot nicer to be around. There's a lot less of a power struggle. And importantly, we can feel empowered to get to our destination. Well, I think this might be a good spot to end this episode for today. I'm having fun with this style, kind of dabbling in the clinical, not the like super expert clinical things, but like the day-to-day clinical things that we all do as therapists, whether we're an expert in a certain thing or not. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you're interested in more clinical stuff, or if this isn't your vibe, let me know that too. I'd love to hear from you. And before we close, I'd like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring today's video. TherapyNotes helps with all of your practice management needs, from scheduling to notes to billing. They have a HIPAA-secure telehealth platform and so much more. If you'd like to check out TherapyNotes, you can get 2 months to try it for free with no commitment just by clicking the link in the description of this video. Whew. Well, thank you again for joining me, for putting up with my whatever version of acting skills I have today. And on that note, I think it's time. Until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well. Is it just me, or have I been spinning in my chair more this time than usual? Sorry, I don't know. I'll find out when I edit this episode if that happened. I'm so sorry.